any friction you're creating with the consumer is going to hurt your conversion. They may convert, but they may have bought more.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to D2C Growth Mode, a podcast by Mayomoto where you learn from D2C experts, tactics, and skills to master your growth journey. Today's guest is Liz Kressel. Liz is an e-commerce strategist and innovator for both B2C and D2C brands, known for lifting conversions over 50%. She was an early pioneer in the shoppable content space, creating content and e-commerce integrations across multiple platforms, including TV. As CEO of Lizard Strategy, she advises companies on increasing conversions, retaining more customers, and generating recurring revenue streams. I met Liz at an event where she shared easily applicable tips to optimize a website for conversions, and her content was so valuable that I could not wait for a chance to have her on the show. So this is very exciting. And Liz, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here, and I'm glad to share the knowledge a little wider as well.
Cool. I want to start right at the back, like actually going back to your past and your past memories. So, my first question to you is when you were a kid, do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up? And how did that turn out to you? Could you share a little bit of your journey with us?
Sure, I always wanted to be an archaeologist. And I guess in some ways I've followed that because I am digging. I mean, I'm going through a lot of different things, digging and finding out like what happened and where we need to go from here. I did decide that took a very long time to do, where you may not get any discovery. So that was a little like I pivoted my journey a little later for something a little more tangible at the moment.
Cool. That's interesting. My sister also always wanted to be an archaeologist. And I feel like it was because of these movies that were coming up at a certain point of all the archaeologists and the dinosaurs. I don't know. Do you remember any sort of influence like that?
No, it actually wasn't any movies. My one of my cousins, like older cousins, was an archaeologist, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. I thought either dinosaurs or Roman ruins, that just sounded really cool and really sexy. Not as sexy as like, e-commerce and what I'm doing today, but I thought that's where all the fascinating discoveries lie. But then she told me like, they don't happen that often. and you see the movies and it seems like there's a lot more going on and it happens really frequently, and it's not true at all.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that is, yeah, I bet it could be really frustrating too. I think you made a really, really good decision, Liz.
Yeah.
I wonder like what that kind of journey was like then, like growing up and then deciding to study business e-commerce. How was that for you?
So I didn't go into e-commerce right away. When I went to college, I was thinking I was going to do pre-med, somehow wound up in economics because my school didn't have business per se. That was the closest you were going to get to it.
Mhm.
And then, started out in marketing. As everything started to move online, got more interested in the digital space and what was happening on digital. I started out in subscriptions. So went from offline, because originally subscriptions were offline, and then to online. So I learned about that business really early on, about loyalty, about churn, et cetera. And I just thought that was super exciting, and did a lot of that in the media space. I was working on a lot of the consumer product aspects in the media space. And then, fast forward a little bit, if you see what was happening in the media market, and a lot of my clients had been television and cable and whatnot, and the big media giants, they were having problems. Why? Because, that was when Netflix and Roku and whatnot, were starting to come up. So I was thinking it made more sense for me to stick. I've been doing all the consumer product, the fashion, all of those industries anyway within those companies. So, to carve a path on my own out in that space, I wanted to focus more on the consumer side, because a lot of what was happening in e-commerce space reminded me of what was happening in media a long time ago, when media was the hot industry to be in. And
Mhm.
so I see so much of that happening now with regard to e-commerce. If you think about the technology, if you think about the focus on the consumer, et cetera. So like there's so much more learnings to be had and a lot of technologies that are at play, certainly with AI and machine learning as well.
Yeah. Okay. And I imagine you actually worked in different industries throughout like this your career. And I wonder what were the patterns that you could actually recognize from those different industries that you could see that whenever you did one thing, the result would kind of be the same or similar. Could you share like maybe one or two learnings that you got like from your career and your journey?
Sure. I mean, I could comment more in like the digital strategy side. So if you think about it, all the industries, mostly have the same problems, right? Like from an e-commerce standpoint, everybody wants to sell more product. Everybody wants to, increase loyalty and retention. Everybody wants to get their average order value up. So that is the same no matter what. And it's one of the reasons I don't specialize in e-commerce. Like I'm not just like a CPG e-commerce person or a fashion and accessories person. I haven't focused on that for that reason, because I am able to take these learnings and apply them elsewhere. Where it changes is in the marketing. Like, who's the audience? How are we talking to that audience? Like, is it D2C? Is it B2B? Is it, a very niche audience? Are we broader? What is that communication? Is there a certain inside language you need to use depending on the space that you're in? Can we get more technical? Do we need to be more casual? So it's more learning about what those similarities are across like my career. I realize that the problems are the same. So why not take those learnings and be able to apply them as you move from industry to industry?
And at the same time, understand. So I imagine that one of the first things that you try to understand from a brand, so as you mentioned, like the audience is so important, would be like strategically, how do you communicate with that audience that we're trying to reach and attract? Cool. Yeah.
So, but I think I think it goes like a step further. It's like, what does that audience need? So there is obviously the language, but
Mhm.
how do you get that customer enough information in order for them to make an informed purchase? If
Mhm.
somebody says they're going to come back later, generally that's basically postponing a decision. They may or may not come back. So if you don't have enough information on the site where they cannot make that decision right then and there, that's a problem. Obviously, with higher ticket items, that process may happen. Like someone may hit your site a few more times. But generally speaking, they still need to have enough information to get over the hurdle of like, what are their concerns?
Mhm. And I imagine so did that kind of thing kind of changes between if we compare a larger kind of budget and a larger kind of brand to a smaller kind of brand, like is there something that you can leave behind if you're a smaller brand and you don't really have the budget to kind of invest in a full strategy?
I think first and foremost, you need to explore your site. I always tell people this. I don't want you spending money on ads. Like, I don't care whether you work with me or you don't. Well, I do, of course, but I mean, I would love to work with them. But my point being, I do not want them to go spend money on ads before they fix their site. If there are holes in your site, if the navigation is terrible, if what I said before, if you're not answering the consumer questions, this is a problem. So all the ads in the world, if you're sending it to your site, it doesn't mean they're going to convert better if you haven't fixed the thing that is broken.
Hmm.
So if you're going to invest anything, I want you to look at your site carefully. Give it to someone who's never been on your site. I call it the grandma test. You could have grandma do it. You could have someone else who's just like never seen your site. Let them, do they know who you are and what you're selling within the first few seconds? If they don't know that, okay, that's a problem, right? Because everything isn't your current customer. How do you get potential customers? Do they know enough about it? Like, you can't use a lot of inside language. That's not great for new customers. But also, when people come to your site, they come with a path in mind, right? So either they're in information gathering mode because they don't know anything about you and they need to know a little bit more about this product, right? They're a repeat customer, so they are looking to purchase an item and they want to go straight to wherever that item is. There are other people who may have a question or a problem about their order and they're going to need to get that answered via customer service, etc. Or maybe they're tracking their order. All of those paths need to be very clear for the consumer. If I have to click around and I can't find stuff, that's a very frustrating experience. And what people don't realize is all this friction on the site. Yeah, maybe they'll buy something, but they might have bought two things or three things if your site wasn't so cumbersome. If it's just a lot of work, people will leave. People say, you know what, I'm done. I'll just get this item and I'm done. I'm out. It's very subconscious. It's very subconscious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talking about like subconscious things. You've been you've been running your e-commerce agency focused on website optimization for over 10 years now. So congratulations on that, by the way. That's really cool.
Thank you.
And I'm curious, what have been some of the learnings that you brought with you from the client side when you even founded a business back
Yes.
in several years ago called Collector's Quest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And back then, I imagine that you also had some learnings that you could then apply to rest of your career until now. So I'm wondering about those learnings you had and maybe the strategies that can even help other brands.
I think one of the main learnings. So first of all, Collector's Quest was a content and commerce site focused on the collectible space. So we had items for sale that were from dealers, like anything in the collectible. So when we're saying it could be toys, it could be vintage clothing, it could be jewelry, it could be baseball cards, coins, etc., or dinosaurs. Actually, we have a lot of dinosaur collectors on the site, but that was the commerce piece, and then the content piece was people actually showing off their collections. So it was this content and commerce integration type of thing. So anytime a collection was shown, we would also show products for sale against it. That said, the way we had built the model was for the dealers. We basically thought eBay was super cumbersome, which they still haven't made huge strides in that, to be honest. But we thought we should fix this. And all the dealers we spoke to said, yeah, this is great. This is what we want. We want a better platform. Well, the truth of the matter is a lot of the dealers were older. They were 50 plus. A lot of them didn't have computers, weren't super digital savvy, were used to going to flea markets, throwing it on a table, or, having it in an antique mall and putting it out. There wasn't as much work. We didn't build the right model, like at the end of the day, because we didn't anticipate people calling us up on the phone and asking us to walk them through it, right? So there's a disconnect. So the reason I tell this story is because what your customers say the problem isn't necessarily the problem, right? Like it's what would have been a better product for them was something like a concierge, right? We could bring them into the digital age, right? That industry is right for the digital age. It still hasn't made huge advancements. There's so much of it offline, right? But what I learned from that is you need to, when the customer says there's something, a problem, you need to dig deeper, because what they want may not necessarily be what they need, right? And I'll give you a perfect example of this. Someone tells you, oh, our sales, are not doing well. We need to do ads. Well, going back to the website, that's not the problem, right? Like it might be, again, all those things we talked about, like your site is broken. That's not great. Your SEO has not been done. It's not optimized. There's not a lot of organic search happening on your site. Maybe you're not answering the questions of the consumer and people are bouncing. So someone's telling you it's an ad problem, it's a marketing, it's a brand awareness problem, and I'm telling you it may not be. So I think that's really the learning to take away, that you need to dissect what is it your customer needs. And you should you should look into customer logs. You should look into problems that people are having on the site. I see this all the time. Here's a big one, and I don't want people to do it. If you are getting tons of questions where you think you need to add something to your FAQs, that is a clear sign you are not giving the customer enough information. FAQs should be for like really unique things like, I'm shipping, do you ship internationally? Things along those lines. If you have to explain how to use a product or how something works or why something is a certain way, you didn't do a good job on the product page. You absolutely did not do a good job on the product page. So that's what I'm saying. You need to pay attention to what the customer is saying, that there are problems, but you also need to, like, when a client is coming to you and saying they have a need, are you addressing it appropriately? Like you may be able to take it at face value, but you may not. So,
Mm.
so
So you need to grab your little archaeologist brush and just like,
yes,
right,
absolutely,
get
absolutely.
some dust off
Yes.
to find the to find the real treasure. Really cool. And I wonder, throughout those years, what have been the like one of the most important skills that you had to perfect to kind of reach this stage in which you can grab your brush and really like find the root problem?
Hmm. So I don't know, in terms of the skills that you would need for that. Oh, that's so it's a little bit hard because I've been doing this so long. Like some of it is very like natural now. Like I can look at a site and within 5 minutes tell you 10 things that are wrong with it. But a lot of it is, I mean, first and foremost is starting with who's your audience? Who are you speaking to? What are you trying to sell? What are the benefits? You know, what are like, and separating out benefits and features. People confuse those all the time, right? Um, so I think a lot of it is really understanding your customer base and how to communicate that to them. I'll give you a perfect example. People use taglines all the time that are really clever, but to the uninitiated, they may not understand what the brand is about. And I'll give you a perfect example. Just with Collector's Quest, we had a great tagline, where hunters gather, right? Play on the hunter gatherer. Um, but if you didn't know we were a collector site, what does that mean? Right. So it meant something to the people who were part of our community. And I
Mhm.
see this all the time on websites where people give this little, like, you know, cute little taglines, or they use language, or they'll say, oh, um, you know, you'll get real energy. It's like, well, is that the benefit or what is it? Like, you need to make it very clear what that benefit is to that consumer. You can't use cute language. A lot of times people do cute marketing language. It doesn't necessarily answer the customer concern.
Yeah. I imagine so. What I understand from that is that one of the skills that you obviously have mastered is um, really like being really, really passionate about what you're doing and kind of like not kind of almost like not resting in a way of like naturally always you're kind of like naturally criticizing things all the time, like in a way that you're kind of trying to fit them into this model that you have created in your mind that and understand if they fit or not don't fit and if they work and if they don't work so that you can kind of get your model better and optimize your model in a way. So this is interesting because a while back I remember I was actually hiring a designer back and many years ago, and I was having a really hard time to find a designer that I thought that was like that had like this talent that understood the brand, and you know, and I spoke to a few of my like friends who were designers as well, and I asked like, so there's this person that I really like working with, and I would love to kind of help them become the designer that I would like them to be for this brand, but it's been really hard. And they were like, yeah, one part of being a designer is having really, really good references and like naturally analyzing every reference you get. So literally like you're looking at a water bottle and you're just thinking like, why are these stickers kind of organized in this way? Why did this person kind of think of doing it like this? What does it say about this person? What does it say about what they like? What does it say about them? So it's just like kind of analyzing things all the time. Do you feel like your mind ever rests from doing that?
No, I'm always analyzing. I think that a lot of is checking. Yeah, it's like this gut check. Does that make sense based on this? Like, I can be in a restaurant, like, you know, I can go to Sweet Green and, you know, I'm on the line and I'm sitting there talking about like how this could be more efficient or something like that. Or like, why did they give out so many napkins? Like their cost for this store, like they shouldn't be giving you like a wad of napkins that big or something. So I think it's always this analytical nature that I have that I'm constantly questioning. I think the other thing is too, I'm not going to tell a client what they want to hear. So, um, you know, if I'm going to push back, like if I disagree with something, and I will let clients know, like occasionally clients will say, this is what I want. And I'll let them know that's fine, but that doesn't help you on conversion. It's going to hurt you. I'm just letting you know. sometimes like people want carousels actually aren't great for conversion. People want them all the time. So, sometimes you have to defer to the client, but I always tell them, I'm like, I don't agree with that. I don't think we should do that, etc. So, I think it's really important to ask questions, give your opinion. Like they're hiring me to be the expert, so I'm going to do that if they decide to take other advice at some points because they aesthetically want something to look a certain way. I see this a little more with fashion brands, beauty brands want to pick the aesthetic sometimes over the conversion just because they need it to look a certain way. So, I just feel it's more important to be able to say those things, push back with the client. I think that's really important. Like ask questions, analyze, push back. It's probably the big skills.
Cool. And I imagine as a seasoned professional, and you've actually mentioned this, right at the beginning of our conversation, how things have changed over the years and how you've seen like technologies emerge. And I wonder about like more specifically this moment in time. What do you see as something that you would like to experiment on when it comes to technology? Like
Mm.
something that might be high on your list for this year.
I mean, definitely I'm seeing a lot more AI and my clients are playing a lot more with AI, more so on the product side. So product photos, recipe generation, or images for recipes. Like it's definitely more on the image side, or sometimes from ideation. It's still a little murky on the IP side, like I wouldn't be putting full on content into a chat GPT or something like that at this point. I mean, I'm very fascinated with where that's going to go and what the limitations are going to be because I think there does have to be regulation on it for sure, mostly because of IP. And then obviously people are worried about what are the machines going to do. So I think there's a little bit of that. But in terms of some of the things that I love some of the like AR, VR, the digital stores, like, the digital online stores. I'd like to see more of that. I still think it's too early. I also think Web3 too early. I know people are like super bullish on it. You heard a little less of it by the end of the year. At the beginning of like 2023, people were like, ah, rah, 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 Web3 and the metaverse. And it's not there yet. It's not there. And I don't think it's going to be there for a while. And if you ask a lot of people, like, do you have a wallet? Like they don't even know what it is, where to find it, where to get it, whatever. Like, so we're not there. Um, so, I didn't go down that rabbit hole with regard to that, but I think, the digital stores are super, super cool. Like to me, that's the next step before the metaverse, where people are doing like online malls where they get to do that experience like with an avatar, but it's much better because you can like see real product and it's not this. I mean, I don't know if you've done any of those, but I've done like Fashion Week and it's couldn't move my partly because I'm a certain age, right? If I were my 8-year-old daughter, like I can move really fast through that universe. I mean, she's on Roblox all the time, but like it's for the average consumer, it's still really hard. Like unless you're a gamer, like you really don't know how to move in that universe. So I think it's hard, but I think the digital stores are super cool because it's no different. Also, I've been bullish on live shopping. I do think that this is going to become a regular medium. It will be part of people's marketing budgets going forward. It's still in the nice to have and the experimental, but I do think, within the next 5 years, it will be part of the marketing spend that people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is an interesting experiential channel. And when you think of, Gen Alpha, when you think of Gen Z, they're much more video oriented online, and of course millennials as well. So
Yeah, yeah. So, do you have any experiences to share with us on that last one?
on what about the differences between those groups?
Yeah, no, I mean, with I just didn't really catch the name. I don't remember what you
Oh,
mentioned.
live shopping.
Oh, just live shopping, like with the lives in social media, you mean?
Live shopping, like the standalone platforms. So
Oh, okay.
I'm a
You mean on TikTok?
no.
Okay. So, can you
Okay,
explain?
sure. So look, the ones that you probably know the most about are the ones like when Instagram, was, has the shoppable content with TikTok Shop, etc. Those are the ones that you
Yeah.
probably hear about the most. However, I'm a huge advocate of standalone platforms, which
Mhm.
means you're able to launch live shopping from your own site and you have content, commerce, and community all on the screen at the same time. And what you're able to do is, because it's on your own site, you own the data, you own the branding, you can have the replay going across your site. These platforms are really terrific. They have great analytics, etc. But like the whole point is you control it. And that data is so important. That data is so important. Like, why would you want it in aggregate?
Mhm.
I hear this all the time from people who are doing like Amazon Live. Like Amazon, yeah, you have reach, but you don't know who the consumers are. Like people have cannot get the data in the way that they need the data to understand what the customer is actually doing. So, and that's the same thing with like TikTok and whatnot. I am also one of the reasons Amazon is a little bit of a different animal. So I want to kind of see where they go because they are an e-commerce platform. TikTok is not an e-commerce platform. It is a discovery platform. They are overlaying e-commerce right now. I personally think maybe somewhere down the road, they may purchase one of these standalone platforms. I do not think TikTok is going to be, is going to be the platform. I just don't,
Mhm.
because it wasn't built. It's not native to that particular, uh, social media platform. It's not meant for that. So, will people move product? Sure, they'll move product. Will they do live on it? No. Shoppable content? Yes. Live? No. I don't think so. Not live.
Mhm.
Not live commerce in the way it's meant to be seen with the three: content, commerce, and community. No, I don't.
Mhm.
Probably a
And
controversial opinion, but yes.
oh, sorry. Could you repeat that? I just didn't
I
catch
said
it.
it's probably a controversial opinion to
Oh,
say that
yeah.
about TikTok, but I just don't see it.
Mhm.
I have there's about 40 different platforms out there. I've worked with about 20 of them. I know what they're capable of. I know what TikTok's capable of. I know what Amazon Live is capable of. I Amazon has a much better chance just because of it's a native commerce platform. They own, I mean, they have the best checkout in the world, right? They have the best checkout. It is the gold standard of checkout. So does that make more sense to me? Yes, it does. 100%. But Amazon is also no different, it's all algorithm based, right? Like if you're not tuning into a live, how are people finding things? Right? It's algorithm based. So did you put the right keywords in? Is it marketed I'm not an Amazon expert, but my point is that it's a different model. It's not the same as um, you know, well, it is with your website with regard to organic search, but it's basically they're both organic search plays.
Mhm. Okay, and from the platforms, the live shopping platforms that you've tried, which ones do you think are the best ones?
I don't want to say that any are better than the others. I think there are ones because here's why, and I'm not saying that in a PC way. There's a reason I say this. All the different platforms, even though there's certain pieces that are commoditized, it depends on what is your budget. What are your goals? Do you have a team in place? Will you be doing this solo? How familiar are you with technology? Like, because some of them are very complex, some of them are much simpler. All of them require, someone behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera, right? Because it's almost like you're creating a broadcast studio. That's what it allows you to do. So like you could pull up people on screen, you could pull up comments on screen, you're running polls or whatever, but that's not the person who's in front of the camera, right? It's someone who's behind the camera. So um, you know, up until 2 years ago, I really didn't even have an offering for my small businesses because the prices were too high on some of the big ones who are out there, like the fireworks and the bamboozers of the world, right? Like they just, for all my little guys, like they couldn't even touch that price point. Now, we have a lot of, great ones there. We have Reactive, we have Swirl. So like those are smaller ones. You have Lisa. There are other ones like in the midterm, Buy With and whatnot. So I feel like there's a lot of options out there that have good interfaces and whatnot. Some people are dipping their toe in the water with shoppable content, which is like basically taking a video and putting a buy now or shop now over that, because you're featuring a product in your reel, like your Insta reel, and you put it up. Not the same as live. Live is literally you have the community in real time.
Mhm.
So, but they're making plays there, and they've made it accessible. And reactive in particular is very impressive to me, because they've gotten the bandwidth costs down quite a bit. Because at the end of the day, this is really a live stream, right? In a lot of ways. And um, they have been able to really manage that. And that was one of the reasons that some of these bigger players couldn't do that for the smaller guys. They couldn't do the price point because it was the bandwidth. Reactive had figured out how to do that, and has a lot of gamification. So I think they're pretty cool. Um, but as I said, I'm a big fan of Swirl as well. So they came from India. So Reactive
Cool.
is US based. Yeah.
Okay, so this is very new to me. I'm trying to understand how it would work. So is it something you connect to your website and then it
Yes.
appears somewhere? Okay.
Yes. So if we were going to have, like, if I had my own website and it's lizkressel.com, it would be lizkressel.com/live. It would literally, you would send someone to a URL. The customer doesn't have any other heavier lift than what they would do to just type in a URL. And then they show up and the show is on. Or you could have it, a lot of my clients, after they do it, will leave a replay up on their site. So it will be a widget that will follow them around. They could close it if they want. Like, so if they go from page to page, it follows them. If they don't want to watch it, they can close it out. But then
Mhm.
they get extra views on that show, and it showcases items, and they'll bring up the product. So as they're talking about it, it will bring up the product. The thing
Mhm.
is, people are making mistakes, and this is one of the things that I see with TikTok, is they have a lot of people just hawking product. Americans need more context. Like, we are not just going to buy it if you're like, you know, here's a pen, here's a notebook, here's a cup, here's a whatever. Like, we don't buy like that. Like, we have to know, like, why is that a good cup? Why am I paying that? Right? Like, what's the reason for that? Um, so, like, you gotta sort of wine and dine us a little more before we're gonna make that purchase. And because of that, it's really, the shows that perform really well are ones that have themes. So, and it's a value add for the consumer, because otherwise it's an interactive email. Why am I showing up? Like, if you're just throwing products at me, I could save time by just going through your email. I don't need to show up to your show. So, but the reason that people do like these is because they get to answer their questions that are specifically for them. So I get to know if this product worked for me, not for a group of people who are like me, but specifically me. I can get my question answered. I can see the product flowing. I can see how it works. I can get a lot of the question answers. And because of that, generally speaking, live shopping shows see 40% lower returns. They see higher conversion rates. Generally, well done shows can be 20% and higher on conversion. Nobody's getting those rates on a normal e-commerce site. Most people aren't. So that's why this is super interesting. Also, from a B2B perspective, a lot of my clients are now considering it for wholesale, because they don't have to get on a plane, and they can bring all their buyers into one circle and have them purchase directly from the site through this program, if you will.
This is really cool. And then, so the only thing that they would have to do is to actually get someone to go on that website, on that URL, and
Yes. And
yeah, to get a watch.
I'm not down on social media. I do think that anyone who launches a live shopping show should simulcast to social media. You can
Yeah.
simulcast to TikTok and Instagram and whatever. Like, you should absolutely do that. But you want to launch it from your own site, because then you own the data and the control, and
Mm.
where the magic happens, like when they're on the site. Like, basically, even if people are watching it on Insta or TikTok or elsewhere, we encourage people to come back to the site, because there are extra, like, giveaways or things along those lines that you're going to do. You want people on the site to get the full experience. Like, if they're on
Mhm.
Instagram, they can see the broadcast, but they're not going to get the full experience
Mhm.
that they would if they're on the site. But look, it's an event like any other. You have to market it, right?
Mhm.
Like, no one's going to show up. It's like, you can't throw it in the ether and hope that people are going to show to your live shopping show. You have to do it through, like, your emails, your socials, promote it on your site, etc. Remind people before the event. It's just like any other event.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Okay. So distribution is still a big thing, and
Yeah, it
promoting
is.
it.
Absolutely.
Cool. And I just wanted to go. I feel like we're so down deep into like this advanced kind of
Yeah.
e-commerce marketing. I was wondering about your. I was actually thinking of the questions that people should ask themselves when they are actually building their website? So like right at the beginning of their journey, like the few things that they have to get right, what would those be?
Who you are and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's number one. But how do you explain it succinctly? You know, we are um, a homemade pretzel brand, right? Um, what specifically, like, I'm not the copywriter, so please, everyone out there who's watching this, like, don't go by that. My point is, I have to understand who you are, what you do, and what makes you different, right? Because there could be a million pretzels out there, right? If we're talking about pretzels, or so I think you need to really nail that, and you need to spend time on that, and you can't just say like, oh, look at our product, because I don't know why your product is different. Um, you know, and I'll give you a perfect example of like Stanley Cup, right? Everybody knows the Stanley Cup is like a super huge thing. Um, I didn't get it. I didn't get, like, I know it's a trend, so everybody wants to like have it now because it's a trend, but also what helped spur it too, in addition to, I know there was like some influencer who did it, but then I don't know if you saw the video where the Stanley Cup was in someone's car went on fire, and
Mm-hmm.
they basically went over to the car, and the Stanley Cup is still completely intact and still had ice in it, like after this car fire, which is kind of insane. So you're like, wow, that's like, I mean, they could not have written a better marketing ad. They like, if they had set that car on fire themselves. So, but that speaks to the testament of this product, like, and why it's differentiated is like, this is a thing that's built to last, right? In that way. So I think first and foremost, nailing who you are, what you do, why you're different. And that has to be communicated across your site the entire time, not just in your hero image, but like, why, remind people, because people have an attention span of a flea, and it
Mm-hmm.
will go like, we're so distracted with everything that's going on. Like, you need to, but that needs to be in your imagery, in your marketing, like in your, like, on page. When I say marketing, I'm talking on page at this point. And then the second thing, as I said, is think of what those paths are. What would people need to do on your site, right? Okay, they don't know my brand, they're going to find out information, or they need to take a quiz, or whatever the case is. Write out what all those paths need to be, and then figure out what's the simplest way to do it. Like, if you have 6 or 7 clicks before someone can get to information, that's a problem, right? So what is that path? How do we keep it clean? What is absolutely necessary? And then eliminate everything else that isn't. Because this is what I see on websites all the time. Like, people kind of like, oh, I have to explain everything. Like, you do and you don't. Like, you have to address customer concerns about your product. Like, are you vegan? Do you have oils like in it? Are there nut things? Like, if you're a food thing, if it's like hair, or there's like a hair product, do you have certain chemicals that are in that? Like, people want to make sure there's no parabens. So like, those types of things have to be there. Or the benefits, like, why am I buying this particular like $32 shampoo? Because you have to convince me why I'm buying this $32 shampoo, and what the benefits are that are going to be delivered to me. So that's what I'm saying. So I think first and foremost, like, after you tell us who you are, you have to figure out those pathways and then build your site. And if you've already built your site, you need to go back and make sure those are clean. And if you're not sure if they are, like, you should not be the one auditing it. You should basically, again, have a friend or someone who hasn't really been on your site, and ask them to do each of those tasks and see how long it takes, and see if they're confused. So, like, if they are, damn straight your customers are too. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, there's so many other things. This is, this is my specialty, as you well know. Like, I'm doing another talk on this, but in terms of any friction you're creating with the consumer is going to hurt your conversion. They may convert, but they may have bought more. But if you're dragging them along and it's painful, we're just gonna, put our thing in the cart and go.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and what about brands there? I mean, businesses they're like really small, just like trying to get on their feet and just trying to be as smart as they can with their budget. What do you think are the key factors that they shouldn't, I mean, that they should maybe splurge on a little bit more and not try to, I mean, I don't know, like just one example to me is just like, what is more important to have like a very beautiful um, branding and design, or is it more important to kind of like get your copy really straight to the point and have really good imagery about your product? I don't know, like that kind of thing. What in your when in
So,
your opinion would be more important?
well, imagery is important. I don't want to discount imagery. However, and you see this more with fashion and beauty brands, not that other industries aren't guilty of this as well, but because with beauty and fashion, they want to present a certain aesthetic, a lot of times you'll see imagery that looks beautiful and looks cool, but it doesn't really answer a question about who they are, what they do, and why they're different. So you see that all the time, or things look a certain way. They just want things to look a certain way, and it may not be the best for conversion. I've had this time and time again with clients who um, want to do that, and you see it in all the like a lot of the luxury brands out there will do this like all the time, like just have beautiful images. So look, if particularly if you're like you want inviting images, you want people to understand what they're buying, what the product is. um, there's but we also want these images differentiated. Like we see this all the time, where a lot of times people will show four different flavors of something and the products look exactly the same, and maybe there's one small thing, like it's peach flavored, it's raspberry flavored, and there's just a peach on the package, and there's a raspberry on the package. And that's a problem because it doesn't really give the consumer an orientation, right? Because it's relying on me to really look into that image to determine this is a different flavor. So like look, I get it, for some of the smaller brands, you don't have a ton of SKUs, you don't know what to do, but like having some of the ingredients, like pictures of that, to show like this is, lemongrass, and I don't know what goes with lemongrass. I don't know. I picked a bad ingredient. But my point is, like, say it was a lemongrass and chili and something else, cardamom, and have pictures of those out with your product. But just having a bag that looks different isn't visually interesting to the consumer. That is a source of friction. It tires the customer out, those things. But also to understand, like if we were, say, a handbag, what sort of features does it have? What's the inside look like? What does the handle look like? Do you have a whole bunch of different views? Do I get a sense of the size? Like bags are different sizes, right? Like the bag may be this big, the bag may be this big. I don't know. So like, do you think people really know what 28 inches looks like? They don't. Like they're not going to go get a ruler. So how do we do that? Like, can you put it on a mannequin? Can you put it on a model? Can you show them what it looks like? So that's really important on the imagery side. And I want to address the copy. Again, because of people's limited attention spans, people don't read. What you need to say everything that you want someone to understand in your headlines. Everything needs to be a headline. I have to be able to understand it without reading further, because many people will not read further. You can have some information after that, but it's got to be like a sentence or two. It cannot be long blocks of text. We today, as consumers, have no tolerance for reading. Like we have zero tolerance. So it's really has to be reliant, like very succinct, um, pointed writing. And it's so important. So you have to think, like, if you want to say, this particular beverage has benefits for your metabolism, like say that in the copy. Like that has to be the headline, and you can go into why it works afterwards. But like at the end of the day, you need to sell on benefits. No one necessarily is going to read that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. If you have an interesting enough headline, they will. But if you don't, like, you can't wait, you can't hope that the person's going to read further. It's not a
Mhm.
benefit to them.
And now that you are mentioning this, I just kept like icons kept coming into my head, like, oh, you can create an icon out of that. But a lot of times, what I see is too much usage of icons that don't really make any sense to people anymore.
I don't love icons. I'll be honest on that. There's a few instances where they work well. I think, on some of the food ones, because of like vegan, vegetarian, no sugar, peanuts, things like that, where they really need to call it out, I'm okay with. Any other any other business, I don't love them. And here's why. Because they're not universal. Um, I'll give you an example years ago, and I don't want to say who the client was, but they basically, um, it was a very large company who wanted to uh, court millennials at the time, right? Because millennials were the big thing. This is before like Gen Z was coming up. And they wanted to use a boat to represent something along the lines of retirement. And the fact of the matter is, like, so when we questions, like we did interviews with millennials, and millennials are like, why is a boat representing retirement? Like they didn't understand why the image was representing retirement. And the reason is, so for those of you who are listening who are old enough, is because it used to be like, oh, when people were going to retire, they'd be like, I'll give up everything, I'll sail around the world. And this was what it was. So, like, anyone who's like probably Gen X and older knows that reference. If you are younger, you're going sailing now. So, like, it didn't mean the same thing. And this is what I'm saying is like, it's not standard. I always tell people all the time, perfect example on a website. People want to get cute with the search thing, right? Like the search magnifying glass. I'm like, everybody knows what the magnifying glass is. Everybody knows what it means. Like, don't have find me, but don't change it. Like, everybody knows what that means. So, like, you need to keep it simple for people. So, I feel like that everybody understands what it means, right? Everybody understands what the little cart means. Like, that's your cart. That's where, I'm going to find my items. But when you start to talk about the icons, unless it's like immensely clear, and I'm not sure all of them are, because they're not standardized. People are using all different icons and they're designing them on their own, and etc. And sometimes they're clear and sometimes they're not. But like, if you need words underneath, like to explain it's no additives or something, is that super clear? It's not. So
Yeah.
right. So or saying like, this is a, I don't know, it's I don't know. I just see people all the time using icons and having to put words underneath, like, and if I covered it up, and if you want to test if your icons are good, cover it up, ask people and see if they know what it means, like, without seeing what the words are underneath. And if they can't identify it, then you don't have a good icon.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good tip. And how? So we've been talking a lot about like these kind of mistakes that brands can make. What are some of the brands that you feel like are just standing out for doing like a really really good job with their websites and their digital marketing?
Oh, it's so hard because there's different things I like about different brands,
Okay.
um, and how they market. I think, you know, um, Kate Spade in particular does a fantastic, like, they do tons and tons of like remarketing, cart abandonment, reminding people like, hey, we saw that you looked at this, not just like the normal cart abandonment, like, hey, you forgot this, but if you looked at it, and then the price dropped, they would let you know, even if you hadn't come back in between. Like, they do a fantastic job of really making sure that customer who had looked at it, like, maybe you might recapture them later. Fantastic job on that. Um, I think in terms of like, emails, I love Fashion File. Also, I don't know if you've ever looked at Fashion File, but they really make it super interesting in terms of like the products that they have. They're gorgeous. They're color coded. They're done beautifully, but also give you a sense of like what brands they have. So I love that it covers the breadth. On websites, it's hard to say because there are some websites that I find really easy to navigate more so than others. So I don't know. It's harder on the website side. I don't know if I would say I love anybody's website in general. It's a little hard. I love, like, I might love someone's creative aspects. I love what they did, but like they might have fallen down on some of like the content hierarchy. Um, or they do a great job merchandising and upselling, but then they like confuse people in the cart. I don't know if I could say I think anybody's, that sounds a little overly harsh, but I don't know if I can think of one that comes to mind, like right
Mm.
off the bat, like has an amazing website.
And do you think there is a difference in the mindset of brands that are doing, like just the example you just mentioned from Kate Spade, that might have like a mindset of, I want to help this person kind of get what they've been meaning to get for a better price, or, like I'm actually going to offer this kind of value or great experience with their brand. And it's not really a matter of whether they buy it or not, but it's like whether they actually feel like we know them and we kind of want to help them make a smarter purchase or something like that. Do you think that happens, that kind of mindset?
I don't know. I don't know if it's as altruistic as that, but I think it's more you understand customer behaviors. They understand it well that someone may not buy it on the first purchase, right? It's a slightly higher dollar amount, right? It's not. Look, I mean, are there $15,000, $25,000 Birkin bags? Sure, I'm not talking about that, but like for the average consumer, they're not buying like a $450 bag, right? The average consumer across America is not doing that. I know there are people who do. So they know that someone may look at, particularly on the fashion front, we may look at something quickly and then decide, I don't know, like let me think about it and come back. So like fashion is definitely one, like versus like products were probably more likely to pull the trigger sooner than maybe something from a fashion standpoint. So I think they understand that it takes us several views of a particular item before we're going to commit. I don't know if they understand the consumers as much. Like, are they getting learnings? I'm sure they have learnings because they're very well timed, and they're saying, okay, we know after 2 emails to this customer, they're going to come back, so like they're definitely very good with the analytics on that because like they're super well timed. And um you know I just think they've set it up, whoever does their marketing has set it up really, really well.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I wonder if it's more of like, sometimes we do that too. We just send a coupon or we send a discounted pay, like a page with the same product with a discounted, just so that people get the urge of purchasing it right now instead of waiting for later because it's just a good value. But
I
yeah.
think it's dangerous. I've talked about this before with a colleague where we were saying that certain brands would always like discount heavily, 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 right? Like, so everybody knows like Macy's, like at certain points in time would have like massive discounts because they would have like sales throughout the year. So or other brands in general where they were constantly having sales, so people would wait it out. So just, it's nice if it's just because if it's like an anniversary, like your brand is now 5 years old, or something like that, or something big happened to, like maybe the company got more funding or whatever the deal is, like that you want to celebrate and give it those one off. But like when it becomes an expectation, a client of mine who's like a luxury consignment, said, they discount mid-month, and she said a lot of people will wait. So, because they know that that's when it's discounted, because they know, because there's a set cycle. I mean, that makes sense in terms of her business, but there are some brands who do something so similar where people know that they're going to wait it because there's always discounts. Why would you do that? Why would you send those signals to your customer? Shouldn't they want your product regardless? And if you always have to discount to get them to purchase, did you price it correctly? That's another concern, right? Like if you can't move product unless it's discounted, then something else is wrong with regard to your pricing and marketing model. Like that's
Mhm.
not correct.
Yeah. And probably even the actual discounting is doing it, it's making it even worse, right? Because it's
Right.
just it's really confusing for the client to understand the value that they can get out of it when it's 40% off every now and then.
If it's too often, like if it's too, like, as I said, I am not a huge fan of discounting unless there's a major occasion for it. Like
Mhm.
we know that there's certain holidays, right? Like there's always tend to be Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, depending what you sell. Um, uh, Potentially summer, summer sale, spring sale if you're apparel. back to school. Like there are certain things that we expect, obviously, when we get into, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, like that people buy gifts. And so then you're into the giving season. So like those are expected, but outside of those, but look, and do you need to do all of those? Like if you're let's say you do sporting goods, okay?
Mhm.
Should you be doing Valentine's Day? Probably not, right? Like that's
Mhm.
not really your brand. Father's
Mhm.
Day? Yeah, it's more male oriented,
Mhm.
generally speaking. So yeah, Father's Day makes sense. Maybe when hunting like duck season begins, right? Or something, or soccer, or like if you think of any of the sports, like maybe something at the beginning of the sports season or school year because everybody starts buying all their equipment and whatnot. Those things make sense for that brand. Do you need to hit every holiday up? No, you do not. But
Mhm.
I think you need to be so careful with discounting. I think because customers become dependent on it. And that is really bad for your business if they're waiting for a discount before they'll purchase from you.
Yeah. Yes, that's very, very true. And I actually spoke to Trang just not too long ago. Trang Kao, she's used to work for Skims, and she was just talking about that. I feel like the whole episode was kind of about that. We're just like, yeah, this really does not work. Like, just discounting too much. And even like for me, like coming from Brazil and now having kind of this being exposed to the way marketing is done in the US, I feel like my partner and I we talk about that very frequently. That we never purchase anything that hasn't been discounted at least 30% because we feel like that's just the norm. Basically, it's always there's always a good deal, and if you don't wait for it, you're just going to pay more, and it's just um, not very smart. So we just tend to kind of wait for stuff too. So we
Yeah,
got
no,
into
no.
that pattern already.
No, it's definitely there's a cultural difference, like because part of my team is in Argentina, so in
Mhm.
Buenos Aires, and like my CTO is in Argentina. So we talk about this all the time about like the customer and the expectations, and it's different, and like the way things are, and even just from a client base, like the he was saying like the Americans are like we need it now and like in South America they're a little more casual about like when it gets to them. So but Americans are much more like if you say you're going to do something, like it means like that minute. So and from the customer side as well, because he originally came from retail and still runs some retail as well, and so he knows like it's very different from the American side and the sales for sure. But I think as I said, it's you have to examine your pricing. If
Yeah.
customers are only if you're seeing major, yeah, okay, you're going to get more sales when people do discounts, but if that's like the bulk of your sales that people are waiting, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a great way to build a business because it's harder. Like what happens when there's pricing pressure for you?
Yeah. I feel
You know,
like it's just they're just using the anchoring effect very much, like just too much, basically not really balancing it out with maybe other biases that they could kind of use to market products as well.
totally, totally.
Yeah. Okay, this has been really great. And I just noticed we're almost an hour in just talking nonstop. So thank you so much for sharing so many great stories. I do have some final questions that I wanted to ask you. So one thing is, so imagine you're just walking past this beautiful area in a city that you love, and someone says, "Hey, would you like to put a mural up in this beautiful wall, like create this wall art somewhere where people can
Mm,
see?" And then you say, "Yeah, I would love to," and they say, "Okay." So you get to choose what is in there. What would you like to say?
mm. I love the quote, do one thing every day that scares you, which is attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. I don't know if she really said it, but I had a magnet that said it. And I always like the quote, but I think it's great because I think it's always encouraging you to grow and try new things. So I think everyone should think along those lines. I don't think it means like put your head in a lion's mouth or something like that. I don't think it's that literal, but
Cool. I love it. Thank you. Another question. So imagine you're going to start market this new brand, and it's the owner is someone super wealthy, and you have unlimited budget to work on it. Where would you start spending your money, and what would be the last thing that you would do with that money?
You said unlimited budget. Um, the last thing is easy. The last thing I would do is ads. I would
Mhm.
that without a doubt, because I think um, first and foremost, I think you want someone to nail your branding, but like what I don't mean what your logo looks like. I don't mean what your packaging looks like. I mean who you are and what you stand for, because everything else is going to be based off of that, right? Like your logo will be based on what's the vibe you want to give off. Your packaging will represent that. Your site, needs to communicate those values, those benefits, etc. So, like to me, it's getting the brand right, having a great website, then I would say is next after that, like to communicate that value um, from an online platform. Once you have that done, SEO for sure. Like, absolute, like, I know people don't want to do this and it's an afterthought. Like, SEO is so, so important. Why not get more organic search? What? Because every customer you get through organic search is money you can save on the ads. Like if you have everything done correctly. I know like people don't want to do this. And also it is hard to find good people, because a lot of people trained on SEO, and I hear horror stories all the time. But if you can find someone who's reliable on SEO, like that is so, so important. And then after the SEO, email marketing. I think you need to invest in really good email marketing. And really good email marketing isn't beautifully designed, emails, but it's literally like, how do you, because I think what a lot of people think about is like the promotional aspect all the time, and they're not telling people what's going on with the company. They're not making them feel good about their purchase. I mean, I always give this example because I had a client um, who sold, you know, uh, luggage and expensive luggage. And after someone purchased from them, I'm not going to buy another piece of luggage like right then and there. Maybe particularly if your really good luggage is going to last a number of years. Like I'm certainly not going to buy another one right then and there. So how do you make me feel good about the purchase? Like what should your goal be? Your goal should be build my loyalty and create an evangelist out of me. And how do you do that? Like you have to let me feel good about the brand and why I like it. Like, so I think people don't think enough about the emails. And also, like I'm sure, just thinking about the cart abandonment, the autoresponders, what are the drips that you can create, like to help nurture these relationships, whether it's like from a new customer or potential customer, moving that loyal customer into a VIP status. What are those paths? Like email, like, and then, as I said, finally, I would go to ads. That would be the order. So branding, website, SEO, email, ads.
Cool.
That's,
Beautiful.
that's the wrap up.
Uh, and um, and just to wrap up, I would love to learn about a book that you like to recommend to people in general. Any favorites?
So, like a business book or a personal book?
A personal book, I would say.
Oh, that's harder. Um, I because I read so many. That's a hard one.
If you want to do business book, that's okay.
I have one that's a little bit of both because I actually did not read it for business.
Mm.
Um, so it's a book called Accidental Branding by David Vinja. And the way I came to this book is David played on my soccer team and never mentioned this. He's a soft spoken guy, but very brilliant. And one day when we were like, emailing about soccer, the team was emailing, I saw in his signature line the book. And I was like, that sounds interesting. And what it is, it's absolutely fascinating from a branding perspective. But he took a bunch of brands who, the people who were in leadership positions were not marketers, didn't know anything about it. It covers people like Burt's Bees. It covers like Cliff Bars. It covers J. Peterman, like a whole bunch of others, and goes into how they were able to, become successes in the market, and gave these backstories. And he was such an amazing storyteller. And it's fast, like, but the brands are fascinating. Like, I didn't know all these stories. Like, I didn't know Bert and the founder had lived off the grid. Like, I didn't know that. I mean, like, this is not, you don't always hear these stories. So I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And I do not get a commission. So I just want to say that I just love that book.
Okay, I'm curious. Definitely getting that one. Cool. And I just wanted to ask just to you, like, if people actually want to connect with you and maybe chat about e-commerce and websites and all the things that you're passionate about, what would be the best way?
So they could either get to me via my website, which would be lizardstrategy.com, or on LinkedIn, Liz Kressel. So, or it may say Elizabeth. Actually, I think it says Elizabeth, but whatever. If you put in Liz,
Elizabeth.
Is it Elizabeth? Okay. It doesn't matter. If you put in Liz, you'll find me. But yeah, so either of those, I am super active on. So
perfect. Liz, thank you so much for joining me today. It was amazing. Thank you for being so open-hearted about like the things that you're passionate about and sharing your story with us too, and all so many great examples. So thank you so much for being here.
Sure. No, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Okay. So thank you and see you next time, everyone.
Ready for this episode's takeaways? Number 1, brand identity comes first. Figure out who you are, what you do, and what makes you unique. That will help your audience truly connect with you. Number 2, optimize your website so well that even your grandma can navigate it. We're talking minimum clicks, clear messaging, and great UX throughout. And number 3, avoid overusing discounts for sales and reserve them for suitable holidays or brand milestones.
This was D2C Growth Mode, a Mailmodo original podcast. Subscribe to get the hottest takeaways from all of our original shows every 2 weeks in your inbox. Happy emailing!